Good afternoon, YouTubers. It's me, Johnny, making a short video on some of the things that happened in the marketplace today. I think it's Wednesday, maybe it's Tuesday, the 10th. Anyhow, some of the preliminary inflation numbers came out today. They're a little bit higher than what the marketplace was anticipating, and most everything got smashed today except for gold and silver, which is kind of interesting. Oil got smashed. Most of the indices, as far as I know, were smashed. Well, maybe not a lot. I think the S&P is down 0.8%. Let me just look. XLY was down 1/3%. The DAX is down 0.5%, 1.5. XOP was down 4.5, a little over 4.5. RSX, which is a Russian ETF for natural gas and oil, also too, it's a good way to get exposure to the banks in Russia and also to the Russian ruble. The Russian ruble has been on a tear lately. I don't know if I'd say it's the number one emerging market, but it's one of the bigger ones that's really running. The Philippines has been running, Thailand's been running, Indonesia's been running. A lot of the commodity countries in Asia are doing pretty well. Anyways, XLE was down 2.5% or a little more. XOK was down about 1.5, a little over. Anyways, most things are down, but like if you look at your tickers, gold and silver, the commodity were up, or the cash prices. Franco-Nevada was up, Kirkland gold was up about 3%, Kirkland's up. Interesting, even though silver was up, I think 1.5% or almost. Pan American silver was only up barely 0.25%. Anyhow, some of the cryptocurrencies were down. What was really down was a lot of the like MicroStrategy, Block, Coinbase, or Coin. A lot of the shares that are associated with cryptocurrency or blockchains in general, or crypto mining, or just cryptocurrency in general. Anyways, I guess my point is inflation was ticking up. The markets interpreted that as bad, at least for the share markets. One of the few things that went up was gold and silver. I think over time, most of these markets are going to recover and start flying again. My view is, I don't think the Fed's going to raise rates. I think they're going to jawbone, that they're going to taper and raise rates until the inflation gets a little bit higher, maybe 10%. So I think if I remember right, the preliminary inflation numbers that were printing out today were 6%. I think last couple of weeks it's been printing out at 5.4, maybe 5.6. So now inflation is now officially over 6%. It'd be interesting to see what it is in Canada. Recently, the numbers coming out of Brazil is 10%. Mexico and most of Latin America, like Mexico, Colombia, are printing like 5% inflation numbers. It's basically slightly under the United States, not by much. And I expect like most data coming out of government now, not all, but a lot of it's fudged maybe. So these numbers you have to keep in mind could be higher or low, who knows, I don't know. But the inflation numbers are starting to heat up. Markets are starting to panic. The old standby gold and even silver today were up nicely. Oil and oil shares was knocked down despite 6% inflation. I think a lot of these so-called inflation hedges, whether it's indices, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, will start rebounding. I don't know about tomorrow, but very shortly. And I don't expect a big taper, but there might be. But here's the trouble. If governments start raising interest rates or start actually tapering, that's going to probably encourage a recession. I don't think we are in a recession, at least not in North America. I think we could be, though. I think we could be going that way. That's why I don't think the Fed and the EU and Japan and China really want to tighten that much. Now, of course, China is a controlled economy, so whatever they do won't affect world markets as much. At least, in my opinion, there could be contagion effects for China as some of their big real estate companies get unwound and go into receivership if that's what they do. It looks like the CCP is going to bail out some of them at a cost to somebody, I don't know who, but some will be left holding the bag. Anyhow, also too in this last week, I think it was this last week, just to give you a hint on what governments are planning to do as far as raise interest rates, the United Kingdom Central Bank, which I think is run by a Canadian, I can't remember his name right offhand, but they did not, I repeat, they did not raise interest rates. The pound got hit a little bit, or the currency against the dollar got hit a little bit. So I think the problem is if governments raise interest rates, they're going to kill their economy, or they're going to send their economy into recession. And then once they go into recession, whatever rates they raise have to come right back down to zero, maybe go below zero. And then they're going to have to start, well, the opposite of taper. They're going to have to start printing money. Basically, there's a lot of fancy terms for printing money, but they're going to be printing money even more than what they're letting on. In fact, with some of this taper, you actually have to go to the government websites, look at the actual numbers, because oftentimes they'll say they're tapering, but they're not. Or they are tapering, but like by such a small amount, it doesn't really matter. They're still printing a lot of money. So that's why I personally would say long inflation assets, whether it's REITs, gold and silver, Bitcoin, your favorite shitcoin, even junior gold mining companies or junior oil companies. I'm more bullish on the Russian assets right now. I think they're the most underpriced, and this is not investment advice, but like if you bought that ETF I was just talking about, it's a good way to get exposure to Russia, not just Russia, but their banks, their currency, and their natural gas. For those who don't know, many in the United Kingdom and the EU are having an energy crunch right now. What they're not really saying in the media, they're saying a lot of stuff why it is, because of Brexit or because of this or because of that. Really, the reason they're having an energy crisis is because the UK and the EU shut down about 20% of their natural gas oil production. Now that's just a number that I average out. I'm not, it's above and below that, depending on which specific country you're talking about. But basically in the EU, a lot of the energy comes from the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. In other words, the United Kingdom has natural gas and coal they could put online, but they're not going to because of the new energy process. They're going to keep these plants closed. They're going to keep their nuclear plants closed, at least for now. That's what they're saying. I think they're going to change that, maybe not now, but in the future. The Netherlands has a big chunk of natural gas and coal, and it's a matter of fact, it made them more vulnerable to Russian gas. So Russia, vis-a-vis Putin, was delighted to ship them in some oil. I think natural gas is coming down a little bit in the Euro markets. Just to repeat this again, I said this in another video. In one day in the United States, natural gas went up 40%. Some of the utility companies in the U.S. have been allowed by the regulator to raise their prices 30%, not even covering what it was, at least for the natural gas utilities. But so they're raising the price 30%. That's a huge hit to consumers, for people who have to heat and cool their homes with whatever energy that utility uses. And they're going to get many, not all, but many will get a bill that's 30% more. And I presume next year they'll be allowed to raise 10 or 15%. So then it'll be way above what the energy costs are going up. Keep in mind there's a labor shortage in the States, so there's a lot of variables on why costs of things are going to go up. It's not just inflation. Well, it's all related to inflation, but it's not just this one thing. I don't want to get that across. There's many things going on, and so you can expect much, much higher costs. In North America, I would say, even in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. We'll just have to see how it all turns out in a year or two, but I expect in a year or less we may be in a recession in North America and Europe. So no matter how much they try to raise rates, even if they do, I don't think they will, or if they do, it won't be much. They'll have to reverse policy, drop rates to zero or below zero, then stimulate and inflate. And they may come up with fancy words for this, but it could get ugly. I suspect inflation is going to tick up to about 10% before the Fed does anything materially, and then I presume we'll go into recession, and then the Fed will backpedal. Also keep in mind, we're probably going to have a new Fed chairman, so the old Fed Powell, or Chairman Powell, will be, probably there'll be a new Fed chair, and they could be more dovish than even Powell. That's kind of been an interesting, if you thought Powell was really inflationary, whoever comes out could be more inflationary, which will really change. I think the U.S. and Congress will be going more red as opposed to blue. We'll see what happens. And there's going to be a lot of pointing finger and blaming, but until we start cutting back on these government programs and cutting back on government regulation, I don't think this inflationary pressure will go away. It will just come down maybe from 6 to 10% where it is now, maybe down to 3 to 4 or 5%, and then go into recession. It's just going to go back up until we get the big default in the United States and in Europe. Until they really cut back on spending, we can expect more and more inflation because the policymakers just don't want to cut right now. Whether it's a left-leaning administration or a right-leaning administration, no one really wants to cut costs right now, or cut the cost of government so they can, bring rates up, have like a national bankruptcy, restructure everything, and then go back to a monetary policy where they only inflict 2 or 3% a year. I think those days are long gone for the next probably decade. Who knows? Anyways, that's it for now. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment, please. Thanks.